In this section, I want to get to the point where you can write some code and run it and see what it does. Everything in the computer really comes down to code running. That's how stuff happens. And so in order to understand the nature of computers, well, you have to run code a little bit and see how it works. Not like a million lines of code, just a little bit of code. That's how we're going to do it in CS 101. Now, before I get to the code, I'm going to have to ask for a little bit of patience. The code elements that I'm going to show you here are just, they're not flashy, they're very simple. It's maybe sort of like Lego bricks. I have to show you a couple basic bricks that individually don't really do anything, but later we're going to be able to put them together and do stuff that's just fantastic. Just by way of foreshadowing, within a few hours, you'll be able to write code that manipulates images, such as, for example, here we have the monkey, moon, and banana. So there's something to look forward to, but for today, it's just very simple. JavaScript is a computer language. There's a lot of different computer languages you can use to tell the computer what to do. JavaScript is the one we're going to use in CS 101, or it's actually JavaScript plus a little bit of extra stuff that I put in just for CS 101. CS 101 does not cover the entire JavaScript language. This is not a full professional programming class. Instead, I've picked out just a few features, just the minimum that we need in order to play with the key ideas to really understand how computers work. All right, so here's our first example. So this rectangle has code in it. You can type in here, and when I click the Run button, what the computer does is it just runs it. It does that, just goes through them and does whatever they say. In this case, this is the first thing we're going to see is the print function, and that tells the computer to print something over here on the right-hand side. So it has the word print, and then it's followed by a left parenthesis, and then after the parenthesis, we just type out whatever it is we want the computer to print. So in this case, we just see a 6. And so over here on the right, it prints a 6. If I were to change that to 123 and then run it, well, sure enough, we get 123 over here. You can have multiple things within the parentheses here. So they're separated by commas. So if I said comma 2, comma 12, and I run it, then we're going to get those things. You can see there's also a print 1, 2 down here showing that. So this is very kind of limited, but that's our first thing, print. And it also gives you a little example of just the interaction between code and a run button that causes the computer to do it. Now the syntax that you see here is very limited. It's not like you can just write out some sentence free form, the computer will just figure out what you mean. It's really quite the opposite. There's a small number of words that the computer understands here, and you have to use one of those. And then also the other bits of syntax, like the fact that there's a left parenthesis here and a right parenthesis there. All those things are required, and everything has to be written out just so for the computer to be able to understand it. That is not just a gratuitous limitation of the code. Instead, the code is limited sort of as a reflection of the inner sort of mechanical sort of stupidity of the computer that I was talking about last time. So it is not an accident that the code, in order for the computer to be able to understand it, has to be in this sort of mechanical, strict form. The good news is because it's kind of simple, it's not very hard for us to use. It's just a little bit foreign. But I like to think of that as sort of, oh, well, that's giving us a little insight about the mechanical, simple nature of the computer. Anyway, the good news is you can get used to it. It looks weird, but really it's pretty simple. All right, so let me introduce a second bit of code here. Oh, before I do that, I have a reminder to myself here. So as I mentioned before, each video comes with this document. So you could pause the video right now, go visit the document. And in the document, all these things I'm doing with the run button and the code, you can just try yourself. Or of course, maybe later after a lecture, you could go and try do it as review. All right, so here's our second bit of code. So I'll run this. So it says 6 high. And that high in between double quotes, that's a string. So in computer code, a string is just a series of letters. And in the code, it's written in between double quotes. So there's the word hi, or I could change it to woohoo within double quotes. And when I run it, it's going to print the woohoo over here. So you can imagine strings and numbers are the two very common data types in computer code. You can imagine a string is used maybe to hold a URL or a paragraph if you were typing something. All that sort of text manipulation is stored as strings in the computer. So that's just a second data type that we're going to be able to use to tell the computer how to do stuff. Another thing that we see here is a comment. So a comment begins with 2 slashes like that, and it just runs to the end of the line. And in the comment, you can just sort of write notes to yourself, what you intended or what's going on. And the computer, when we click the run button, the computer just knows to ignore the comment. So it's just a way of decorating the code with little remarks. Alrighty, so I can put different things in here. If I say hello or whatever I put in there, it's just a string, so that it's just going to get printed out. One sort of funny example I could do here is what if I put the word print in there? Because since that is also the name of the function over here. So if we can see what that does, let's just try it. I'll click the run button. It just prints print there. So when letters that I type are enclosed by double quotes like this, the computer understands that they're just passive data, and it just handles them in the regular way. It doesn't get confused by what word I put in there. So a key message here about syntax. I talked about syntax a little bit before, how it's mechanical, but there's a pattern with when you write code that involves the syntax, and that is when you just write in code, print this or whatever. It's very common, even for very professional programmers, it's very common to have little syntax errors. And so when the professional programmer hits the run button, it's very common, there'll be a couple syntax errors, and the programmer is just going to go in and fix those very quickly and think nothing of it. It's just a quick, superficial little process. The reason I'm mentioning this is when someone is just beginning with code, of course, they're going to run into syntax errors because that's the common thing. I think they can get the mistaken impression that the syntax error means, oh, wow, I really don't understand this. No one else has this trouble. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Everyone has syntax errors. It's just something you fix very quickly. So to promote this idea that the syntax error is just no big deal and I want to show you how to fix it, I've prepared some examples here, just a bunch of code examples, all of which have syntax errors. And I just want to sort of work through the process of identifying and fixing them. So each one of these blocks of code is supposed to produce this little ABBCCC printout. And each one of these has an error, and I just want to go through fixing them. All right, so let's try clicking this, try this first one. Let's see. So we're getting this error message. Sometimes the error messages are helpful, and sometimes they're just confused. But you should at least read the error message. So it says, error, PRLNT is not defined. Not defined means it's a word, but the computer doesn't know that word. So if I look carefully, you'll see here that second one, instead of saying print, it says PRLNT. And I chose the L because it looked kind of like an I. I was trying to be tricky there. So I'll put the cursor there, and I'll just change that to an I. And now when I run it, okay, now it works. All right, let's try another one. Error, unterminated string literal. Not the most friendly phrasing. So it has the word string in there. That's a tip off. A string literal is this form where you have a double quote and the string inside of the quotes. And what you'll see here is unterminated. What it means there is, if you look carefully, the second quote, the closing quote is just missing. The string didn't end. So I'll put the quote in there and I'll run it. Okay, now that one's good. Let's try this one. Error. Missing right parenthesis after argument list. Print. Oh yeah, sure enough. Look, so in that case, the error message was just spot on. So I'll put the right parenthesis there. Alrighty. I'll try this one. Print error, missing the right parenthesis after. Oh, so in this case, I'm looking, the right parenthesis is there. Sometimes the error message is just confused. At least it's highlighting the right line in this case. So you have to look kind of careful. I think this one's a little subtle. Print BB, it looks right, but if you look at the next line, see how this one has the comma. It's like, oh, right. We're missing the comma after the first item. All right, now it works. All right, I'll do just one more. This one has 2 syntax errors. That's a comment telling us that. Let's see, error, there's the right parenthesis is missing. I'll run again. There's still an error. Pront is not defined. That's the word it doesn't know. Oh yes, that should be print. All right, now it works. I'll leave this one. You can visit if you care to. And here's also an example problem. You can try if you want. Sometimes in the document, I'll just sprinkle little extra problems. If you wanted to, you could go visit and try. So we've seen the print function, how to call it, the basic process of clicking the run button and seeing code run and fixing syntax errors. Those are all the things you need to do to write simple code like this. So for next step, give it a try yourself on the exercises.